Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Latinaly, the untamed, uncensored, and unapologetic podcast for women to embrace their muchness. I am Kaya Burgos, your host, and today we have the kind of conversation that feels less like an interview and more like you're having a cup of coffee with a woman who has lived a life, dropping gems that you didn't even know that you needed to hear. But today we're going to hear them. My guest today is Kae Kronthaler-Williams, a global software marketing executive, author, and a woman whose work runs deeper than her accolades. Her new book, Not Made for You, calls out the systems built to keep women feeling small. But what I love most about Kae is the quiet work that she's done behind the scenes to build a life, career, and a voice that carries her power throughout. This isn't just a conversation about tech or careers. This is about identity. It's about belonging. It's about what we carry, what we outgrow, and what we finally claim the moment we decide to stop shrinking. Kae, welcome to the Latinaly podcast. I am so thrilled to have you on today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Kaya.
So I have to tell you, this could not have come at a better time. I just left Paramount after 8 years, and all of the emotions that I've been going through on the back end are just, it's a lot. And I've been thinking about my future and what that looks like. But we kind of always have those thoughts about what does my future look like in my life, career, and family, and truly I haven't thought about it for the past 8 years because I was super comfortable and I was like, you know what, I'm getting my check, I'm great, I love my team, I love my job, and I feel really secure. But now all that's gone. So I just feel like this comes at a really perfect time, not only for myself, but I know for my listeners as well, because I have had so many of them message me that they're going through such a pivotal change in their life. And, it's really about the quiet work that we do when we're alone that then plays into who we are in our career. You are so impressive and wonderful, and I'm just so thrilled to have you on and just to pick your brain and get into all the things we're going to get into today.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Happy to have the conversation. And this happens to a lot of us at different stages in our career.
I think that when we go through such pivotal changes in our life, it almost feels like it almost feels like we lose our grounding a bit. And it's almost like we have to we have to find it. I did a severance opt-in. So I wasn't laid off. So I
Yeah.
wasn't like it wasn't a surprise per se, but it definitely did feel like, even though I did have control in that decision and it felt empowering and it was great, still kind of felt like, okay, like I'm being given this crazy ultimatum and I have to make this decision. And it still feels like the ground kind of gets pulled out from underneath you when you have to make a decision like that.
It feels a bit insecure, even if you're making that decision, right? Because we're so used to getting a check every couple of weeks from this company, and we're going to work, working with the same people, right? And working hard, and we're on our phones, we're on our computers, we're constantly on the job, and then all of a sudden it ends. And we have to understand what that looks like for us. And a lot of us, I think a lot of women, a big part of our identity, unfortunately, is what we do for work.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that's gone, you're left feeling quite vulnerable, right?
It's almost like when you introduce yourself, the first thing you say is, "Hi, my name is so and so, and I do this for a living." And it's such a big part of our identity, and
Yeah.
it really does shape us. It feels like you lose a part of yourself, and it feels really scary. In those moments where, things can get shaken up a bit, are there any sort of like rituals that you do during your day or before work or after work or even, in the middle of the chaos of your day that make you feel really, really grounded?
So by the nature of my role, because I work in high tech startups a lot, or scale up. So a lot of times I come in and I'm helping them grow their marketing engine. And if we do a great job, we get acquired. So then I'm out of a job again. And so there's been times in my career that's happened a number of times. I mean, it's great, if you have equity, that's fantastic, but you are out of a role for a while. And so I've gone through this a number of times, and it can still be, it can be ungrounding, I guess is the word, each time, but I've gotten better at it. I think the first thing is to recognize what it is, right? You're feeling insecure because you were as in anything, something in your life changed, and change isn't always comfortable. So you have to recognize that. And I do that. And there's a lot of self-reflection that I do in those moments, right? I try and find excitement in it, right? And that, like, okay, I'm open to do anything I want to do, right? And so I allow that excitement in, for sure. And start to think of different possibilities. The other thing I do is I make sure I have a routine. I do have a routine where I'm running. I like to work out. I like to run. Running grounds me. So whatever it is that grounds you, and I'm somebody who needs a routine. Even on the weekends, I'm not great without having some type of routine.
Yeah.
And mine is that getting up in the morning and working out. It could be getting up in the morning and sitting and have a cup of coffee, or reading, or whatever it is for you, like having but do that every day, right? So you have some sense of routine, because we do like some amount of routine. So that I do. And then again, as I said, I really try and look at the excitement of it, and the possibilities, and there's self-reflection. There's time to reflect on. For me, I look at, all right, how did the marketing organization I was just leading, how did we do? What did we do well? What didn't we do well? So I take the time to reflect on that and think about, what am I going to do the next time I go into an organization, right? What are the things I'm going to take with me that I learned? And what are the things I'm going to change because I don't think they worked out well, or I wasn't leading well in that particular area. And then I also take that time to educate myself, right? I'm constant marketing, because I'm in marketing and tech. It changes a lot. And so I'm always taking that time. I'm reading articles. I'm doing webinars, or attending webinars to really understand what's going on in marketing. I'm talking to people in my network. So I do keep myself very busy during those times, and not just for busy work. It's with a purpose to get better at what I'm doing and prepping myself for the next stage of whatever that is, opening my own business, or going into a new role.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that everything that you do, I mean, doing it, you just said it's not the busy work, right? It's doing it with purpose and intentionality so that it serves you. And I think that when a lot of us go through these changes, and I mean, you kind of expecting it with each turnaround that, you're like, okay, when we get acquired, you go, even that knowing still doesn't really remove the, okay, I got to kind of start over a bit again. Even you knowing that is like you're doing this all the time. Like, this is not your first rodeo when you're going to go in and help launch and scale. And then you're kind of like, okay, my job is done. I'm on to the next. And I think there's this duality that we feel in that, yeah, there's this sort of like freedom and this kind of confidence that blooms. But then there's also, this anxiousness where it's like, I gotta pay these bills.
Always. That's always, unless you're really, really wealthy and you don't have to worry
Right.
about money. That's always a consideration. And it's also a loss, Kaya. Like, we have to recognize that whether we made the decision ourselves or not, there is a loss of a routine, of peers that you might have enjoyed working with, of the work that you enjoyed, and you got some benefit out of that part. It's feeding your ambition or whatever it is. So we need to recognize there is a loss there, and it's okay to mourn that loss. Just don't go too far in mourning the loss, because you can
Right.
you can step into a negative space, and you don't want to do that. But we do have to recognize those things. And again, a lot of self-reflection, journaling, talking to other people, those all help, right? Like this is when you this is when you gather your community of people, women, whoever it is, friends, relatives, and really lean on them in these moments, because there is a lot that you have to think about, and you do have to give time to rest because you spent a lot of energy in that company.
Mm-hmm.
But now you have to rest for a little bit and then build your energy back up, because now you have to look for another role. And that takes a lot of energy to do that, because you have to be excited for each job that you're interviewing for, right? So there's all of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think building that excitement, it is very necessary, and it gives you like this hopefulness whenever you are then, going into those interviews, or even just applying, or kind of just networking. I would get the craziest anxiety for like networking events, rub elbows with people, and this was in my 20s, and now that I'm in my 30s, I'm like, I am going to go. That sounds really exciting. It may
Right.
take me 2 hours to get to the city, but I'm going to go to that event, and I'm going to shake hands. I'm going to do the things. And, that excitement, it's there and it blooms. But I think sometimes for a lot of us, when you have this vision of how you believe this next phase is going to go, any minor setback feels really scary. And you kind of get defeated, and you
Yeah.
feel you're like, what am I even doing this for? So, like, you have the loss, you mourn it, then you get excited. It's so many different emotions that we're feeling at the same time. And then when the one thing doesn't go right, you can immediately retreat into yourself, and now the excitement is kind of gone. Has that ever happened to you? Has that ever, you've kind of felt the setback, and you're kind of like, I can't really find the joy right now, and my head's just not in it.
Yes, absolutely. And it happens in little moments, but I've had times where it was pretty profound. And again, it is that loss. You feel that loss. And there was one time where I wasn't finding joy in tech marketing for a while. I just wasn't. And then things happen in a company, and again, people we acquire, and you lose that role. And I just didn't have the energy to go look for another job. But at that time in my career, I absolutely needed to work, right? And so I honestly, what I did, my husband took me to Jamaica for like 2 weeks. He gave me a journal and said, just write. Um, and I started to think about, I had been thinking about starting my own business, like in back of my head. I take a long time to come to things like the book I wrote. I've been thinking about that for a long time, right? So it takes a while. And I had somewhat been thinking about starting my own business. But so I started to just write down what I liked to do and what I didn't like to do. And that was what I was journaling about. And as far as work, what are the things I like to do and I didn't like to do? And I wasn't really thinking about starting my own business necessarily at that moment, but a little bit in the back of my head. And then when we came home, one of my friends said, "Hey, I know you're out of work right now. There's somebody who needs some help with marketing. Would you be willing to help them?" It wasn't in tech. It was in lifestyle, fashion. And I said, "Oh, sure." And so I did that, and I ended up starting my own business, and I had it for 5 years. Now, and the reason why I'm telling you this is we can have a plan, and people can get really dismayed when that plan doesn't work exactly the way we had intended it to work. But I have built my career off of taking opportunities, taking a risk, and taking a different opportunity as they unfold. And that's how I built my career. And so we have to recognize that a plan, it's great to have a plan, it's great to have goals, but you may not get there in a straight line, right? It
Right.
may,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to be open to, because what happens if you only think this way, like this is how I'm going to do it, there's other opportunities that are happening in the universe, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and you're missing out on them because you're thinking, I must do it this way. And so
Yeah.
I challenge people to really open themselves up on how to get there, right? My career was not a linear path at all,
Mm-hmm.
right? I built it by taking different opportunities and knowing what my ultimate goal was, which was to be a CMO, and I knew what skills I needed to be at that level, I took opportunities based on building those skills.
Wow.
Right.
First of all, shout out to hubby because
I know, it was very
hello.
nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. Hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
Babe, you can't find a job. Let's go to Jamaica for 2 weeks. I just want you to journal and relax. Okay.
Yeah. I
Love
know.
that.
Yeah. It was great. And it was perfect timing. He did the right
Yeah.
thing for me.
How important is it, I mean, to have a partner that does that for you,
Yeah.
that really just kind of knows what you need, even
Mhm.
when you kind of don't feel like you know it yourself. I mean, how powerful is that? And that's so wonderful. And I think that taking those little steps and taking the opportunities as they come and as they unfold. I'm a planner. I mean, I am like a control freak.
Me
And then
too.
COVID happened. And I was like, we can't plan. I can't plan for nothing. I can't do anything because I mean, life just kind of happens and you have to adapt and, be like water, and you gotta roll with the punches, and you have to
Yeah.
find new ways and different avenues. People really underestimate word of mouth. I mean, it's an old
Yes.
school way, but people really underestimate that and those connections that you build because your background in tech, and then you get thrown into lifestyle and fashion, and you're kind of like, okay, this is like rejuvenating me. This is great for me. And then it kind of just catapulted you, and you're like, okay, I'm going to start this business. So it gave you life. That phase of
Yep.
you, changing and pivoting to a new direction gave you life and gave you everything. And I think that it's really hard for women to, especially when we're told, you know, do things by this book, and this is your survival guide, and you're on this path, and do boom, 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 and you'll get there. And the growth and success in whatever that looks like really is not linear, and
No.
it's always moving and it's changing. And so in those moments when it feels really jarring for you to pivot, what ways, aside from journaling and running? I wish I could run. Oh God, I wish I would. I loved running. It seems so great. People are so happy when they run. I'm like, I wish I could run.
Yeah.
Journaling and working out. What are the other ways that you kind of self-talk in reassuring yourself, you know what,
Yeah.
this is jarring right now, but I'm gonna be okay.
Well, you just said it. I'm going to be okay, because
Mm-hmm.
you are, right? And some people are more risk adverse than others, right? And I'm okay. I am okay with risk, a certain amount of risk, right? But it has to be that realization that you will be fine. And you can take this opportunity and take this risk. And if it doesn't work out, you can go back and lean on everything else you've learned in the past, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not a requirement that you take this path and stay with it, even if it doesn't work out, right? I had to close my business down in 2008 because of the economy. That was very hard to do. But I had a successful business for 5 years. You take those risks. We take those risks with love, right? Going into
Yeah.
relationships. It's the same thing. You have to tell yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen to me, right? If I
Mm-hmm.
take this. Now, there are financial considerations always.
Yeah.
But what is the worst thing that can really happen? And can I back up if it doesn't work out and take a different direction or go back to what I was doing? And typically the answer is yes. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the self-talk I give myself, right? It's really not that big of a deal to try. I might as well try this, because who knows what could happen, right?
Yeah. I love being a trier, and I think for some reason I think like younger generations don't, they kind of like make fun of triers and people who try new things, or
Right.
people who pivot and choose a different path. And it's just like, when did it become uncool to try and to not only try, but to bet on yourself, and to, because even with me leaving, you know, I have all these things that I would like to do. And don't get me wrong, I love my career. I'm a designer. I love my career. I
Mm-hmm.
loved my team, and they are some of the most incredible, talented people I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And my boss is a one of one. Can't find them like that.
Yep.
Um, And so, and I love my roots as a designer, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to do all these other things. And I have to bet on myself and take that risk of pouring into myself and doing all the things that I want to do. A lot of people we kind of put a timer on ourselves. I think women, we put a clock on ourselves and it's kind of just looming right here, whether
Right.
it's biological, career, financial. I mean, where it's always like we're always under our own microscope to, be first or do this quickly. And I think in just taking a step back and doing that self-talk and saying, you know what, I am going to be okay. What is the worst that can happen? I'm
Right.
doing this for me. No one is doing this. I'm not betting on anybody. I'm betting on me. And
Yeah.
to take that quiet moment and say, you know what, I still have I still have this. And to your point, which you said, just because you left someplace doesn't mean that you lose all of those skills.
That's right. You don't lose the
And
experience, right?
yeah,
Yes.
and all of the things that you learned in that role, they really do, they shape who you are in your next role. They shape who you are outside of work. I think those moments where, you know, at work that really challenge us, because they work in life, they flow into one another. It's almost as though when we have that loss, it's almost like everything that we went through at that company just goes away. When it
Yes.
really doesn't.
No,
It's going to
it
sit
doesn't.
with us and it's going to be with us. Okay, a quick little mid-roll. Who is she? But I have something for you. To celebrate my episode with Kae, I am giving away 3 copies of her book, Not Made for You: How Women in Tech Can Challenge Bias, Claim Their Space, and Thrive in a System Built for Men, which is, by the way, an Amazon bestseller. And then I want you to comment your biggest takeaway from the episode. It could be on a reel that you see on TikTok or Instagram, or it could be right underneath the episode on Spotify or YouTube, whichever platform you use, whatever platform that you watch me the most. And if you comment on all 4 bonus entries. I'll pick the winners in a few weeks and I will DM you directly, either from our Instagram account or our TikTok account. So let's get back into the episode. And your career not being linear, and like we said earlier, it's such a huge part of our identity. Who were you before all of it?
I was pretty insecure person, definitely insecure. I grew up to be, very polite. I, I come from a military family, so it's yes, ma'am, yes, sir. You speak when, or you're spoken to, right? Like it was just, strict and a lot of rules, not in a bad way. There were 9 kids in my family. They needed to have rules, or my parents would have been insane. So, but I was that person. I was really raised to be polite, which I think when I first came into these companies, I thought polite meant quiet. And I was not great at communicating, or I had a lot of fear inside. People told me I was a good communicator, but I was afraid to communicate. And I was very different. And when I came up too, there was these rules around how women should behave, and it was to behave like men, right? We had to model the men in how we spoke, how we led, how we presented, how we networked, and it didn't work, right? And so I changed so much of who I am and how I communicate inside work and in my personal life. That changed. And even me being able to speak with other people and being more open to speaking to people and feeling comfortable, that came from my career more than my personal self. I am more of an introvert, even though people think I'm an extrovert. I'm not, right? It workforce that I had to be because of the roles I was in. So, there's a big shift in how I behave and who I am, but not my values, right? My values stayed the same for sure. So yeah, I was very different. I think I was a lot shyer when I first started than I am now.
When you are home and you're relaxed, do you feel as though your older self comes back, where you're a little bit more quiet or shy, or maybe you keep to yourself a little bit, or has that shift in how you carry yourself, has that just taken over and it's almost become a part of your
Who I
essence of who you are?
I would say I have moments of, I'm definitely somebody who needs my alone time.
Yeah.
I am definitely somebody who, if we go to a social event, I have to brace myself for a second. I still have
Mm-hmm.
that, even at this point in my life. And I've had to talk to people, in speaking engagements, etc. But I still have that
Yeah.
moment of, I got to gear myself up because it's not natural to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just not naturally who I am. But I am more open to risk and trying different things. I love meeting people. I network a lot more. I engage with my friends a lot more. So that part has shifted in my life. And, I'm with somebody who is quite an extrovert as well. So that helps, right? But there are the moments that I have to go, oh, I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to do it. And there's times where I say, you know what? I'm not going to do this today because I don't want to, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
feel right to me and it doesn't feel comfortable. And why put myself through it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of roles that we have to fall into within our role at work that really kind of go against the grain of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And it it's very uncomfortable. And my husband likes to say you need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And when you find yourself in a space that, to one person, a social event might not really be a challenge, and they're gonna go and they're gonna have a great time and it's awesome, right? But to you, or even sometimes me, it's kind of like, okay, this is fun. I have to, get my mind right. And so
Right.
sometimes what could be a small challenge to one is a larger challenge for another. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think that when we are faced with these in life, at work, it really does it really does shape us in a really, even though maybe not in the moment because it's kind of scary and it gives you anxiety, but in the long run, it is a positive sort of adaptation of this new, habit that we have where we're, we're going to be a little bit more outgoing, or I'm going to speak my mind a little bit with a little more assertion and not so people pleasing, having a more of a confidence in the way that we speak and how we carry ourselves. And so those challenges really are great at work, even though sometimes they are pretty scary. Um, and so when you were brand new in your role and just you're in the scene, this is your first day, how was that for you in that mindset shift where you grew up in a very, very military household where it's, I was raised this way, but in order for me to get things done, I need to be this way.
Yes.
So when did you when did you learn that?
I think they were gradual changes. It wasn't a aha moment for me. I was trying to achieve my goal, right, of getting to a certain level in my career. And so it was gradual. And I think it helped that I came from a family of 9. So you survive, right? And you
Yeah.
have to be able to talk to people. So those things helped me, right? So I wasn't completely without skills, but it happened over time. And I think the thing that we have to recognize I'm aging, um, over time, you become more confident as a woman, I think. And the trick is bringing yourself to work, right? Back then, they didn't want women. They didn't want me showing up as a woman. They wanted me showing up and
Mm,
acting like a man. And it doesn't work. And so when I start to come now, I show up as me. Take it or leave it. This is who I am, right? And this is
mhm,
either going to work out for both of us or it's not going to work out, right? And I'm not going to apologize for that. That doesn't mean I'm rude. I'm not. I'm calm. I'm professional, but I am going to speak my opinion when I think it deems, when it's necessary to do so. And I'm going to say things the way I would say things. I'm going to present and I'm going to communicate the way I would normally present and communicate, not the way they want me to as a man. I'm not going to do that.
mm,
And that's where we have to get to as women. We have to feel comfortable being who we are, being a woman, being feminine, being empathetic, whatever it is. There's nothing wrong with that. All of those are strong traits, just like what men bring to the table as well, right? And we're strong and we're great communicators and we're great leaders because we do have empathy. That is not a liability, right? That is a
Mm-hmm.
great thing to have as a leader. So when we start to understand that and appreciate who we are and what our skills are, it's easier to come to work because you're not shifting who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going into that role and shifting now to try and fit in. You just are being you.
No, definitely. And you're not shrinking. You're not,
No, no,
you're not making yourself smaller so that everyone in the room can be comfortable. You're showing up, and that it makes you more confident, but it also there's also a sense of pride that you feel within yourself, because I think that when we do go through these gradual changes, there sometimes maybe isn't an aha moment where we're going to say, okay, I'm going to be this way now. But I think that sometimes with these gradual changes, it kind of just becomes us. And when we do finally, you know, become the version of ourselves that we've been envisioning or that we've kind of been turning into, when we have that moment and when it's over, you kind of sit back and you're like, oh my God, I really did that. That's pretty cool. And you kind of give
yeah,
yourself a really nice pat on the back. It's a silent growth that we're not really aware of at the time.
right.
But when it finally does happen, it's almost like a canon event. And that's just who you are. And it's really great because it now sets the stage for everybody when you walk
Yes.
into a room.
A couple of things of what you said there. It is about showing up as who you are. And, I speak to a lot of women and how do I get over the fear of speaking in a meeting?
Mm.
You know how? By speaking in the meeting, right?
Yeah.
Just try it, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times we have experienced so much bias in our lives, but we also put all of that in our own head too, right? It's not always the bias that's happening. Sometimes it's happening in our head and we have to let go of that and just do what we feel is the right thing to do. Like speak up in the meeting if you have an idea. And as you said, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's not necessarily about being uncomfortable with yourself, being comfortable that the room may feel uncomfortable because now you just stepped out of the role that they think that you should be in, right?
Mhm.
And you have to be fine with that. And
Absolutely.
that's where the being comfortable with being uncomfortable really plays in these rooms is let them react the way they want to react. That doesn't mean you should change who you are and how you're addressing things or what you're addressing in the rooms.
When we have to put ourselves in those positions where we're overcoming that sort of fear or kind of internal blocker, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that you show up for yourself in those rooms. I think it's really powerful because as I was growing up and I think as women of color we're raised that we have to work twice as hard to be seen.
That's right.
We have to even my mother would tell me that based on my last name alone, they're going to judge you before they even know you.
Right.
And, when you show up, you have to be the best. And at some point, that mindset of working twice as hard, it's great. But I think sometimes it could become harm, it could do more harm than good sometimes. And I think that when we just stop trying to work twice as hard as everybody else to be seen. And just
Yeah.
if we want to work twice as hard, we're going to work twice as hard for us. Do it for
Right.
us. Show up with, our confidence and assertion. And because we know exactly what we're doing, we
Right.
are who we say we are. And no one in the room has to tell us that. And I think that when we have to work twice as hard to be seen, it almost gets in the way of just working hard for you as a woman. When did you realize that working twice as hard as everybody in the room isn't the same as you or your work being valued?
Yeah, I love this conversation because, yes, as a Black woman, I was raised to understand that I would have to work twice as hard because I'm female and I'm a Black female, right? And there were certain things like you always had to dress right, your hair had to be
Yeah.
perfect, you had to speak correctly and perfectly, like everything had to be perfect. And our parents did that to protect us,
Yeah.
right? So that protect us against bias. And I get that and I appreciate that, right? And keep us safe, right? Don't wear hoodies, whatever it is that we teach our kids, right? But what I recognized in work was two things. Number one, sometimes it didn't matter how well I was dressed or how well I spoke, they still had the bias anyway. And the second thing I recognized was there were other people in the room, white women, white men, that didn't have to do all of that. They didn't have to work twice as hard as we're killing ourselves trying to work twice as hard. It's a big burden. And they were doing okay. And I started to recognize that. And I thought, that's not what matters here. What matters is my competence. And I'm going to stick to that. Regardless of their bias, I will always be very good at my job. I will master my profession. That's what I focused on. And I will have the answers in the room and I will speak confidently because I've done my work. I've done my homework. I know this profession. I know this industry. I know this role in the company. That's what I focused on. And that gave me the confidence to speak up in these rooms and not worry about anything else. How I looked, how I dressed, how I spoke. I just didn't bother with that anymore. And that's my recommendation for people. It's focus on what you know is the right thing, which is doing your job well. Not killing yourself doing it, just doing your job well and knowing your job. That's it. It will eventually, not to all people, because we know people are going to have bias regardless. But for the most part, when you sit in these rooms and you are speaking with a lot of intelligence and background and experience, it does come through and they will recognize it.
There's a lot of noise that can kind of come with that, because with all of the, even just the quiet bias, and sometimes when we're women, we pick up on everything. Even
Mm-hmm.
just the little arch of your eyebrow, I'm gonna pick up.
Right.
In those moments when you kind of take that home, you're talking yourself up, you know the material, you know this, and you're confident in who you are. Sometimes all that noise, even though sometimes it's quiet and then sometimes it's a little smirk here, or someone getting promoted over you here, how do we quiet that noise to make sure that we show up even better than we were yesterday?
Well, first of all, you address it. When when
Mm,
when you see bias, you name it, and that's part of the book that I wrote, right? Like, because it can be very subtle, and sometimes we don't recognize it, and we don't recognize that it is actually discrediting us in the rooms. So name it and address it, always in a professional way, but address it, right? You have to. That's the big piece of this, is that's how is addressing it to help change. And the other part of it is recognizing where it's coming from. It's nothing about you. It's about the system that was built by men for men. And it's about individuals and their behavior. That has nothing to do with you. You shouldn't change who you are or how you work or how you think about yourself based on somebody else, right? You have to tell yourself that and believe it.
absolutely. Really making sure that you claim your space, and in addressing it, in, you know, talking to them about it, having that open dialogue about it, and you really kind of nipping it in the butt, you
Yes.
do claim your space even further, not
Yes.
only in your role, but also in the confidence within yourself. I think it's sometimes it's a little easier said than done. And I know that, addressing certain things, you know, a lot of women, especially women of color, feel that they cannot address something because of retaliation, or, other, like biased little nuances that will kind of come in the background. What advice do you have for people who are really scared to address those things? My role, I was a senior designer. I'm not a
Mhm.
C-suite. And, even though your title is important, sometimes it can make you take a step back and say, okay, well, I'm not a C-suite, I'm not a director, I'm not this. I can't really address that.
Yeah. But you are a human being and you have the right to address it, number one. Doesn't matter about
Hmm.
title. There are
Hmm.
certain ways to address it. Now, typically I work for a CEO. So am I going to am I going to address somebody directly in a room, a CEO? It depends. Sometimes I
Hmm.
do. It depends.
Hmm.
And there's ways to do it. And then, and I talk about this in the book. I give you scripts on how to do it. You have to be, always professional and always calm. And there's times where you can do it in the room and there's times where you don't. So you have to get a feel for that, where you take it outside of the room and just say, hey, I noticed that when I say this, you dismiss me, or, this has happened a couple of times. Just bring it up. And you can't worry about their reaction. You bringing it up will make them aware that they shouldn't do it again, or they're aware that you will bring it up to them again. So hopefully it diminishes it. And that's what you're looking for, is to diminish that behavior. If it doesn't, and there's retaliation, and I've had all that happen, are you in the right company? That's the next question for you, right? Right?
Now,
Are you in the right environment? If you're
y-
not able, if you don't feel safe addressing it, and you're not going to feel safe at first at all, right? You're just not. And I haven't always been. And there's times even now where I'm like, should I bring this up or should I not? Let me wait. Like, we do that. But you do have to address it so that people know what you're going to tolerate and what you're not. You're setting boundaries by doing that.
absolutely. And when a lot of us, when we set boundaries, that's when we get the labels of you're too much and you're dramatic and it wasn't even that serious, and I was just making a joke, and like, why do you have to take it so far? When you feel that, sort of, if you've ever felt sort of the blowback of setting those boundaries, how do you refine your voice when people are telling you, oh, you're being dramatic, or maybe you shouldn't have said anything, or you're being a little too much? How do you say to yourself, my voice is my voice, and I am not shrinking for your comfort ever?
I just do. I mean, maybe that comes with age. Like, I'm not going to apologize for that. And again, it is addressing it right, immediately. Like, I was told, oh, you're being defensive. And here's how I responded. No, what I'm doing is reminding you of the priorities that we set. I didn't say, no, I'm not being
Mm,
defensive. Why do you think I'm being defensive? No. And then I respond, right? And if someone says I was joking, I would say, I didn't take it as a joke, or no, that wasn't a joke, and I don't want you to ever do it again. Period.
yeah.
Who cares what they say? It's what you say, right?
Right, exactly.
And
Exactly.
that makes you feel better. It gives you the self-confidence to do that again because you spoke up for yourself, right? And again, I'm always calm. I try and take a very kind route, or I'm just very matter of fact sometimes, like telling me I'm defensive, or you're angry. No. And then I just say what I'm saying. I don't go, no, I'm not angry. Why do you think I'm angry? Like, I don't give in to any of that. No. And I move on. But I'm calm and I'm professional. They get the hint.
You mentioned something about when you're talking to women and they say, oh, how do I get comfortable with talking in a meeting? And you go, you just do it, talk in a meeting. And the more you do it, the more you'll get comfortable with it. I feel like it kind of ties into this as well. Unfortunately, certain things have to happen for you to then address, certain biases and comments. Unfortunately, it has to happen for you to be able to exercise this muscle of you saying, no, I'm going to address it. So it's almost like you kind of have to deal with certain things and kind of go through it a little bit to then be comfortable with doing it. And I think it's the thing is, it's not only at work too. I mean, I think a lot of people deal with this in life too, just with their families, and like reclaiming your voice in family dynamics, in, friend groups, and just
Mm-hmm.
so many different things. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever had to say, "Oh my gosh, I gotta act like I'm at work now," and you're like at a family function?
Yes. And that's the part of me that I think I've learned through work, is how to address conflict because I lead a lot of teams, right? So you have to learn how to address different personalities and conflict. I learned that at work. And do I apply it in my personal life? Absolutely. Yes, that I learned how to communicate well based on the roles that I have. And I do apply that at home for sure.
You definitely have to, and I find that for me personally, sometimes I find it's the opposite, that I'm much quicker to address something that it's in my personal life, and then at work, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm anxious and I'm nervous and I'm scared. And often in my husband's family and my family, I'm always going to be the one that will address something. I'm always going to be the
Mhm.
one that will set the boundary.
Yep.
I'm the, I'm the problem,
Hmm.
essentially, because
Yep.
I'm not going to tolerate certain things. It's definitely a skill that has to be worked and practiced. Setting boundaries is probably one of the most difficult thing that women can
Yes.
do. Like, a lot of women don't know how to set a boundary
Right.
and are really scared to set a boundary because sometimes it does come with some blowback, and it's uncomfortable. And, you know, even though we know I'm not going to tolerate this, this is not meant for me. I don't like your behavior. I don't like your comment. I don't, regardless of any avenue in life, boundaries are very necessary. How would you tell someone who's afraid to set a boundary in their life? What would be something that you can give to them that they can take so that they could feel ready to set that boundary
So the first thing is you mean at work or in personal life or
in general? What
in
in
general?
any, yeah, family, but I mean
Yeah.
there is a professional, you know, vocabulary, hat, etiquette that has to be taken when you're at work, of course.
Yes.
But really just in general, really.
Yeah. Well, there's etiquette in at home too, or otherwise it's not gonna land well, right? So, um, I think you have to think about setting boundaries. It's not a negative thing to set a boundary, right? You're allowing yourself to do things well if you set boundaries and set priorities. Like that's not a negative thing, right? You're saving your energy, you're saving your value, right? By setting that boundary. We look at boundaries as negative, but it's not negative. It's very positive actually. Like, okay, you want me to work on this project, but here's the list of projects I have to work on. I can't do all of them. So let's discuss which ones I should be working on, right? There's nothing wrong with that, right? Why
Yeah.
is that a bad thing to say that, right? Or I didn't appreciate what you said in that meeting. Here's why. Let's not do that again, right?
Yeah.
And it does take some courage to do it, but we have to, like, why does it? Think about
Mm.
why is this a bad thing that I'm saying this is not okay, or no, I cannot do this amount of work, or no, I can't go to that family event, or I can't be with that person in the family because they just create this negative thing for me, right? Like we they would do it. You have to think of they have no problem doing it, but
Mhm.
so why shouldn't you do it as well and protect yourself? Um,
Yeah.
we have to stop looking at that as a negative thing. It's a very positive thing, and people will get used to it. And who cares how they label you? I've been labeled in the family as well. Yes, same as you. Creating boundaries, drama. I don't care anymore, right? Uh, I'm protecting myself, and they can react either positively or negatively, and you're not responsible for how somebody reacts to what you say. You have to remember that you are not responsible to their reaction. If you say something, people have a choice to either be happy with what you said or not be happy. That's their choice of how they're reacting. It's not
Mhm.
yours, right? It just say what you need to say, let them react the way they need to react.
Yeah. It's hard to say, you know what? I can only control me. I cannot control you. I control
Yes.
my reaction, and I set the boundary. And I think that it's something as simple as a reminder, a self-reminder for us to say, you know what? No, this serves me. You know, what this person did, I'm not happy about it. I am not comfortable with it. And no, this is only serving me. And I think it makes us stronger as women. I think it makes us stronger leaders. It makes us stronger partners and mothers. And I really just think that overall, it is protecting ourselves with everything that we go through, just as women alone.
Hmm.
I think that we have to be the ones that protect us the most because
Yeah.
not not everyone's going to do it for us. And I think it does definitely shape us in who we are, and it also shapes our success in life in whatever that kind of looks like. When we talk about success, it sometimes is a season and it's
Hmm.
not always a constant. It's not, like you said earlier, it's not linear, and sometimes you have to take a step back. And for you right now in your life, what does success look and feel like for you?
Success from a company perspective. This is a good conversation. I was just writing about this recently, like picking that right company. Success is joy. You brought the word joy. Success is joy, right? So to me, if I'm in a company and I feel valued and I feel safe to be who I am, communicate the way I need to communicate, speak up and be seen, that and enjoy the people I work with, that is the most important. That to me is success, right? And in those companies, I'm able to develop, I'm able to grow, all of those things. That's success to me. And if I'm not getting those things there, I will go somewhere else because I'm not going to stay in a company where I'm miserable. I've done it and I've had to do it. Sometimes we have to do it for financial reasons until we find another job, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but I wouldn't stay there I won't stay in a toxic environment at all. And I've been in companies that were fabulous and I still talk to the people. We enjoy each other's company. We really liked working together. There are companies out there like that. I hear from a lot of women, well, this is just such a great job. I'm going to take all this toxicity because this is going to help me grow in my career. Not really. It's not, because you don't feel safe to share your ideas. So you're not going to grow in that company. And so that's, to me, success is being happy and
Mm-hmm.
enjoying my life, all of my life, not just my personal life. It's enjoying my work life, my personal life together. That's
I
success to
love
me.
that. Making sure that you find the joy in everything that serves you. And I think that sometimes we feel it's almost too good to be true. I know that it's out there, and I know that for so many of my listeners who are going through this shift in career, I know they're like terrified if
Yes.
that they're not going to find that joy or that community in their company. And I wanted to bring this up because in talking about community and finding a place that works for you, that brings you joy, um you've said that women don't just need mentors, that we need sponsors, women who open doors and not ones that just give advice. So for a woman with ambition, what does a real support system look like?
So I think there's internal support systems and external. I have an entire network of, and not just women, by the way. It's, I have a network of women and men there that think the way I think and they're open minded. And I have an external community, and some of that is people who they know the profession I'm in, parts of that profession really well, so I can go to them for advice. Some people are not necessarily in the profession, but I can seek out advice. They understand business strategy really well, and some people may understand a certain part of marketing well. Or we just, had worked together and we're friendly, right? And I just need someone to say, hey, this happened to me. Can I talk to you about this? Like, is this real? Or, am I overreacting or whatever? So that's the external. Internal is the same. You want that support system of people, especially women, if we're going through situations, you want to be able to say, hey, this just happened to me. So they can validate your feelings or say, no, I think you're overreacting, right? You need that. And then mentors are great to have. I've never really had a ton of mentors that I didn't say, hey, will you be my mentor? Some people just took that task on, women and men. I've had some amazing male bosses who really cared about my career. The sponsors are a little different. Sponsorship is when you're in a company, and men get this much easier than women. When you're in a company, there's a lot of politics that go on as who's going to get, promoted and who's going to be the next leader. And so when you're not in those rooms, sponsors are people who know your capability and they're talking about you in the room, even when you're not in the room. Right. And so those are the people that are helping you get on those special projects. They're making you more visible. And some of that is through networking within the company and collaborating. I have a wide net when I collaborate. It's not just within the marketing team. I collaborate across levels and across departments because people start to get to know you. They start to know your work. You become more credible. It disrupts the bias of a female, right? The typical bias that we see as a female. And then they're going to talk and they'll speak up for you in those rooms. And there are some official sponsorships that happen in companies as well. There's programs that they have. And that's kind of a mentor / sponsor. But the sponsors to me are the ones who know you. They understand your work and they're going to talk about you and give you credibility in rooms that you're not in.
That is, so powerful. And do you find that with everything that you've been able to, navigate through and lead, charges of, and all the positions that you've had, do you find that you now have this opportunity to be a sponsor for other people? And what does that do for you when, maybe a lot of times in your career you haven't had a sponsor or you haven't really had someone that had your back? How does that make you feel that you are doing that for someone else?
Yeah, it feels great, but it also feels natural for me, right? I care about people. I care, there's women and men in different departments. If I'm, as an executive, if I'm watching somebody struggle or they're going through something, I will call them and say, hey, do you want to talk about this or do you need some help? Or if I see someone doing good work, I will mention it in the executive rooms that we're in. That comes very natural to me. I mentor a lot of people in my personal time as well, people who have worked for me in the past or, people that I've gotten to know. And I just like to do that. And it brings me joy in that I'm helping somebody else be successful. I'm helping somebody navigate the things that I had to navigate, but hopefully it's easier for them because I'm showing them a way that I've done it and been successful. And obviously they can tailor it to their own personality or needs, but I'm making that smoother for them. And that's my goal, right? And that's why I wrote the book, to help other women that are coming up, like not have to go through everything that I went through, and make that path easier for them. I feel like that's my contribution to my profession and my industry more than anything else.
Yeah, we've talked about joy. It's a word that keeps popping up in our conversation, and I think in work there are so many things that bring us joy, and your book being able to help shape women's really confidence and power, and I know that that brings you joy, and um being able to be a sponsor, be that voice in the room that carries throughout and gives people that seat at the table. What are some of the things in your life that really truly bring you the utmost joy outside of work?
My family, being with my family, brings me a lot of joy. It's my husband and I, we don't have children, but I have a lot of nieces and nephews, as you can imagine, having 8 siblings.
Yeah.
That gives me a lot of joy. And then I think for myself, it's having peace, feeling peaceful. And that, that took a while to get there. But yeah, family and there's things I like to do. Like I love to travel. I love to read. Those bring me a certain amount of joy. But in spending time with my husband traveling we love that. But yeah, it's family is really important to me.
That's wonderful. And so to close us out, because I've kept you way longer than than,
Okay, I love that.
than
It's been a great conversation.
oh good, because I'm looking at the time, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've kept her an hour. Okay. Your your book is out. We talked about you being an Amazon bestseller. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I I just wanted to ask you if there was one thing that you could leave for your readers and my listeners as a woman, as an executive, as everything that you are, is there something that a reminder that you can leave with the audience today?
Yes. The bias that we face at work, all the challenges that women face at work, there is a way to address them and have a joyful career. That's what I want you to know. You can do it and still have a joyful career.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for being on the
Thank
show.
you.
I absolutely loved talking to you. What a way to have my first guest. I am so blessed. Um, this has been so wonderful. Congratulations again on your book, and
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you, Kai. I knew we would have a great conversation when we first met, and it was wonderful. It lived up to expectations for sure.
That was Kae Kronthaler-Williams, and honestly, what a gift. Conversations like this remind us that we're not asking for too much. The rooms that we were in were simply just too small. If you related to this episode in any way, send it to another woman in your life that needs to hear it. And Kay's book, Not Made for You, is out now. It is on Amazon, and you can run and go grab it. Or you can enter the giveaway and possibly win it. If you cannot get enough of me the same way I cannot get enough of you, go ahead and follow us at Latinaly Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. And be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and on Spotify, where you can watch this podcast or you can listen everywhere else. And we have a new signed Kaya coming up. And if you want to be on it, I'm going to need you to go to our NGL link, ngl.link/Latinaly Podcast, and submit really anything you want. Tea, gossip, a question, and I will answer all of your submissions candidly and with love on Signed Kaya. I am your host, Kaya Burgos, and this is the Latinaly Podcast, where we are untamed, uncensored, and always unapologetic. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and I will see you next week.